it's that thrill. It's like climbing a mountain and you have that adrenaline rush. Like, oh my God, I found something. I didn't know about that before.
Like I'm that person who would like to use, oh, that's amazing. This looks beautiful.
But now I'm so curious. I'm curious to figure out.
And I'm like, okay, people are going to think I'm cuckoo, I'm nuts, and I cannot say that about food.
And this food element gave you that real dimension.
That's exactly where you are. I mean, a culinary tourism company sounds so exciting.
Otherwise, you would have just been, another bookish nerd. And we wanted to make sure you're someone who can fit into our culture. And we love food.
They say in Dubai, your net worth is based on your network, and your net worth is not always about the money part. It's about the people you meet.
No one is gonna come around and knock on your door and be like, here's a food show, do you want to be part of it? It doesn't work like that.
Nowadays it is about building relationship, because sometimes you find your vision and you find your goals by meeting that person, like, hey, this is what I want to do.
I realized what I wanted to be known for.
Culinary Conversations with Supriya. The name says it all. From my heart to yours, discussing the delicious world of food, people, culture, and a lot more. Thank you for your love and support for our first few episodes, and welcome back to yet another mouth-watering episode of Culinary Conversations with Supriya. I am Supriya, the founder of Vasai Local Restaurant, proudly the first Koli restaurant outside India. Before you devour into our delicious conversation, could you please support our podcast by liking, sharing, and subscribing on platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast? If you enjoy indulging both your ears and eyes, you may also watch our episodes on YouTube. And for those who like to stay connected on social media, you may also find us on Instagram and Facebook. Your support means the world to me. Have you met someone who could transform our city Dubai into a culinary theatre? That's precisely what she's been accomplishing since a decade, specifically since 2013. She provides culinary tourism that explore hidden eateries while sharing the stories, history, culture, and nostalgic tales behind every dish. She says they're committed to celebrating the underbelly of Dubai. What an absolutely appetizing statement. This episode strikes a special chord with me today because our guest here represents of someone whom I once wanted to become, someone who wanted to host a travel show, someone who wanted to meet new people, exploring different cultures, and someone who wanted to tell stories. I must admit though, food wasn't a part of my life menu back then. She's the founder and calls herself the Chief Executive Muncher of Frying Pan Adventures. Her food tours in Dubai are designed for travelers and locals who appreciate culture, relish good food, storytelling, and walking. She's someone who treasures connections with people, enjoys exploring different cultures, and has a profound love for both food and storytelling. With a zest for storytelling and a passion for all things food, she has been serving up mouth-watering tales and heartwarming conversations that leave us craving for more. So let's dive deep into the sizzling world of flavors and stories with the one and only Arva. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to ignite our taste buds and embark on a flavorful journey as we welcome a founder, a presenter, a writer, a podcaster, and above all, a culinary maestro and a food connoisseur, Arva Ahmed. Arva, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. That was such a mouthful. When you went through that, I was like, really? Am I all that? But thank you so much.
You are indeed all of that.
It just gave me an ego boost, so I appreciate that.
Okay. That's food ego boost, I guess.
It is.
Okay, great then. Arva, behind your remarkable journey with Frying Pan Adventures and Deep Fried and the soon-to-launch Ditch the Silver, we would like to know the Arva that you are behind the scenes. Where were you born? What were your interests like? What was your personal journey?
Sure. So a lot of people think I was born in Dubai. I actually wasn't. I
Okay.
came to Dubai when I was all of 3 months, probably. I'm born in Hyderabad in India. That's where my roots are. That's
Okay.
where my folks are from. And my folks actually moved here in the 1970s. So we used to live in Sharjah before that.
Okay.
And then 1989, we moved to Dubai.
Okay, that's
And I've
amazing.
been here ever since. And that is really what sparked my connection with the city. For me, honestly, growing up, food was not a thing. Like, it was just not something I was interested in. I mean, I would pick food on some very non-flavor related dimensions.
Okay.
For example, rainbow colored ice cream.
Absolutely.
Or a restaurant that had candle lights, that was fascinating as far as I was concerned. It was that kind of stuff, a lot of fast food. That was what Dubai was back in the day.
Absolutely.
But also, I was just one who was constantly buried in either books, or I was just one who just was very, very driven. Like, I always wanted to be achieving something. So food and meal times would actually get in the way.
Okay.
I was like, okay, let's just get this over with and let's get back into work. The only thing I would really look forward to were my Friday dinners, because we would step out and that would be our time as a family to get out, explore one place. It would happen once a week, and that to me was incredibly exciting. So I think a little bit was sparked there. Another part was sparked because my mum is not just a fantastic cook, but she is also a nutritionist.
Oh, okay.
So when we grew up at the table, it was very, very common for us to talk about, this has beta carotene and this is what this is going to do to your blood. And that's how she would talk. Like, okay, this is going to cleanse your blood. And so it's very, very common for us to hear food being spoken in that way, which is not necessarily how we speak about it on the tours. But I think that very deep love for food came in through her.
So genuinely, I didn't know this part of you. So we, like they say about the roots, right? So you do have the root, I presume, from your mother.
100%.
Because the way you explain food and the way you go into the depth of it, it's not only where it comes from, the history, the culture, and the background around food, but what it does to you and so on. So I understand that is some way coming in from your mother.
100%. I mean, she has so much curiosity. I remember going on a trip with her. We've done a couple of trips together.
Okay.
And she's always the first person to ask a question. Like, she loves to learn. She just wants to know everything. We come back, she'd be like, Arva, we'd written those recipes in Jordan. Where are those recipes? Like, hunt those recipes down. I need the, so she's very, very curious about that. And I think that part, that bulb in me only switched on much later after I'd gone to college. Because growing up, one of the things was, you guys need to learn how to cook. My sister and me both need to learn how to cook. Eventually one day you'll get married and then you won't know how to cook. And I'm like, well, then now I'm not going to learn how to cook.
If that's the reason. I like you for that.
Right, exactly. As a teenager, you just don't give that reason. So I was very averse to going into the kitchen and making rotis and doing what. I was like, well, why should I learn this for some other human being who's not even in my life right now?
Or a Hyderabadi biryani.
I know. I was like, no, I mean, he can figure out his own cooking game. Why should I do this? Whoever that person is going to be. So it's only when I went to college, I think that's when I realized that there's only so much of pizza and brownie and ice cream I'm going to have. And now I just want
home food.
I just want home food, yeah. And I want it at some weird hours of the night when we're studying, 1 a.m. or whatever. As freshmen, that's what you want.
Yeah.
And so a college mate and I decided, you know what, we're going to learn how to cook. And then not only will we learn how to cook, but we will actually start cooking and serving other people. Like, we'll start a takeout service out of our dorm.
That's amazing. But I'm presuming that's not in Dubai, because I think you studied
in the US.
In Philadelphia.
Yes, so that was
correct.
In Philadelphia. So we decided, alongside our degrees, we would just do this as a side hustle.
Okay.
And it was fascinating. I mean, it was really intense and rough because you're going to school during the day, and then between 6 and 10, we would somehow figure out the grocery shopping and cooking. Because, in a dorm, in one of those little cramped dorms, you can't really buy supplies for a week. You just buy what you can that day.
And were you doing the Indian cooking? I'm just
100%.
asking. Yeah, oh my God, in a dorm.
It was nuts. I mean, honestly, that was a little bit crazy. But I think that is really what sparked. It just turned on something in me that I didn't even know was there. This idea of, standing and having conversations over a pot of simmering dal. I just felt it was connecting me to different people who I normally would never have really had a conversation with.
Okay.
And now over food, you suddenly start having those conversations. And it was also for me, a lot was about student life and not splurging.
Okay.
That was the second part of it.
That's
Part of it was
amazing.
cooking.
Yeah.
But the other part, I just felt really indebted to my parents that they were sending me there, and I wanted to be responsible. So I was not gonna go, and I didn't even feel attracted to going into like the fancy places or, you know, spending like on the high street. It was just never something, it never appealed to me. And it also helps that doesn't help, I guess, that I suck at using cutlery.
Yeah.
So if you throw me in front of a white tablecloth, it's all perfect, I'm just so out of place. Like, I just want to step out in my jeans and roll up my sleeves.
You just want to be the casual yourself.
And I just want to, and I used to love walking. Like, I'd love walking and exploring and finding something at the end of the street. So the combination of cooking and this idea of like, oh my God, there's discovery. Like, I can walk. And then suddenly I've seen something that I never, wow, there's an Ethiopian place at the end of that road. Oh, there's like, you know, a little creperie that's at the end of, you know, South Street. That kind of stuff would give me like a new sense of energy that I didn't even know was possible.
Okay. All right.
And I think that's where it all came about.
And how did this develop? Because, you know, when we're from an Indian background, like I love my biryani and I love my dal rice. How did you discover yourself of trying another cuisine? Like you said, Ethiopian cuisine, yeah? So how did you even feel like, oh, should I try this? Because we're so used to our typical Indian staple diet. So how did that come to you? And when did you feel the sense of going and exploring the places? You said because you were cooking, right? So you were cooking and giving out to people.
Yes.
But at the same time, you also felt, so the cooking part was because you wanted to be independent and take care of yourself. And then going out and exploring part was trying out different food. So how did those both correlate, and how did you figure out, oh, I'm interested in food now?
Again, I think it comes back to my mom, because growing up, yes, we would have Indian food, but she would also cook other things. She was very, very curious about when we'd step out, you know, if there was an opportunity to explore something, we would. We didn't have as much diversity as we do today in Dubai.
Yeah.
But she still had that constant curiosity, and I think it's just natural when you're around a mom like that, you are going to get infected with the same level of curiosity.
True. Absolutely.
I just felt like every meal was an opportunity to discover something. So why should I waste it on doing something that I've already eaten before? I don't want to do that.
True,
you know, I may as well discover a new thing. And I think for me, the first time I must have eaten something, like whether it was Sri Lankan or whether it's Ethiopian, I just, even now just saying it, I get goosebumps.
You're hungry? Oh, okay.
I don't even get it's actually not even, the act of eating is for me not even the end goal. And I think this might sound weird to a lot of people who probably think, oh my God, this girl really loves eating. Yes, I do. But more than eating, what I love is the idea of discovery. It's the discovery part of it that gets me excited, because when you're discovering, you know, it gives you, it's that thrill. It's like climbing a mountain and you have that adrenaline rush. Like, oh my God, I found something. I didn't know about that before, but now I'm so curious. I'm curious to figure out, in the case of Ethiopia, you know, why are they eating so much vegetarian food? Like, who knew that they had a whole vegan culture? Why do they have a whole vegan culture?
Yeah.
Let's go back into that. Is that historical? How does it? And so you start learning things about communities that you never knew about before.
That's amazing. So again, coming back to your question about, trying to discover, and you mentioned a thing about people think that you love eating. I must say, your videos and your podcast doesn't only tell that. In fact, what you said is what your videos actually say. You know, it is about your videos, your vocabulary about food. Like I'm that person who would like to use, oh, that's amazing, this looks beautiful. And I'm like, okay, people are going to think I'm cuckoo, I'm nuts, and I cannot say that about food. But like I said, when I listen to your podcast, Deep Fried, and the way you explain, like the way you talk about gawa or the dates, and you know, it's just so amazing. So kudos to you on that. And we know that it's just not eating, it's a lot more, and it's more about discovery for you. So when did you get back, Arva, to Dubai, and when did this all happen, and when was Frying Pan Adventures born, and how did this vision come to you?
Sure. So I moved back in 2010, and my goal always growing up in Dubai and even in the US was to come back and work with my dad. So I just thought I'd do a couple of years in, regular like consulting, be a management consultant, come back and work with dad. The thing was, though, rewinding back to when I was a consultant, it gave me the opportunity to travel a lot in the US. But even more importantly, the consulting company that I ended up joining was a boutique consulting company called Cats and Back Partners. And they turned out to all be a team of people who were incredibly passionate about food.
Wow.
So it was very, very interesting because when I was recruiting on college campuses for jobs, I was very, very young for the MBA class at that point. I was one of the youngest in the class. And a lot of companies were like, what are you? Who are, we don't understand. Like, you go back and, like properly graduate and then come.
Back,
they couldn't figure out. And I just found it very disheartening. And then I remember sitting in this interview with these consultants, and they started asking me questions about the stakeout service I did and about all of the food related things on my resume. I just thought that was fascinating. And we ended up having a conversation that was completely different from the other interviews I had. It was entirely focused on food. I mean, they usually in a consulting interview, you would get a case, you got to crack this business case, and nothing. I had 2 back-to-back interviews. There was no case that was given at all to me. And I thought that was just very, very odd. I got invited back. Again, I just felt like, wow, this set of interviews is taking a very different turn. And eventually I got the job. It turns out that for them, they just felt this food element in my life was so interesting. They're like, we know you were super young. We figured out that you got to where you were because you know how to do math. So there's no point in us quizzing you on that stuff. We just wanted to make sure you weren't a robot, that you were a real person.
Yeah.
And this food element gave you that real dimension. Otherwise, you would have just been, another bookish nerd. And we wanted to make sure you're someone who can fit into our culture. And they love food.
I think you put your heart out there like you always do with food. They read it all in.
They took it in.
Yeah.
And they focused on that part of me, which made me a real person, not on my grades or not on, whether I can, like, I don't know, do whatever theory that they want. None of that. And I love that. And I think that gave me the license when I joined that company to be very open about my love affair with food and food history and food culture and discovery. Every team outing, I would be given the opportunity to like plan a whole thing. And I think it was all just fueled. And I lived in New York, which is just
I was just
so
going to ask,
fantastic.
that's way back in New York.
100%. And so New York, that is where I was discovering Sri Lankan food or Yemeni food or Afghani food. And I remember when I moved back to Dubai, I was like, isn't it nuts that actually Dubai is closer to all these places? And I discovered, why haven't I found them here? They must be here, right? And that's when I started looking.
And it's so funny because when I came to Dubai, I wasn't a foodie back then, like I mentioned earlier. And Dubai is the place where I have tried so much of even the Indian cuisine. For example, there are various brands out here. Now you have so many chart options. 25 years back, it was difficult to even find a vada pav. I remember somebody coming from Mumbai, because I'm from Mumbai, and I'm like, hey, listen, can you please get me that vada pav? And I remember my ex-boss, he was going for a day, and I'm like, listen, can you please get me the vada pav? And trust me, I was waiting for him to get me that vada pav. I was like craving. I just moved to Dubai. And he comes back. I'm like, where's my vada pav? He's like, listen, I didn't get it. I'm like, you could be kidding, joking. He's like, no, I went to the window and the guy explained me कि देखो सर जी ये आलू रखा है आप लेके जाओगे flight में खराब होगा and all of that. And I didn't get to eat my vada pav. So I totally get you there. So coming back, there are so many brands or so many cuisines, even on the Indian aspect, that I have tried in Dubai, because we're such a multicultural city, be it food or people, and that's where we've tried it. And New York is my favorite city in the world as well. I mean, just walking on Times Square, looking at people, understanding different cultures is what I do. So how long were you in New York, Arva? And exactly, going back to what did you do on that project with the company apart from the food part? Was there something else that you did with the company, or you just was all about food? Like, listen, food, talk to Arva.
No. So, I mean, of course, my main job was I was a consultant. So I was flying back and forth between Houston and New York. My clients were in Houston. Houston is another really fantastic food city. And so, I had a regular management consulting life where you're solving different problems depending on what the client has. And there were a range of them. But this was more of my my hobby on the side. Just it was like something that I knew I loved. I would read food blogs. I signed up for cooking classes in New York.
Wow.
I would do, there was a guy who did a pizza making tour and I had to sign up for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn how to use a knife professionally. It was all these little things that just got me very, very excited. Though I will say, while at one point New York would have been my favorite food city, I don't think it would be anymore. I just don't think it would be anymore. I think Dubai has so far surpassed a lot of the places I've seen. And I mean, if you just picking up Indian food, we I don't think it's possible to really get 100% authenticity outside of India. Let's be clear. So that's not what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the nuances and representation of different Indian societies and getting as close as possible to that authentic mark in terms of the availability of spices, just walk into our regular stores.
Yeah.
I have people around the world who are like, in New York you had to go to Kalustian's or whatever, which I don't even know if it's open anymore. But that everything is at our fingertips and there's so much nuanced understanding. I mean, in New York there was like one place for South Indian food probably, you know, if you wanted dosas. Here,
and
I don't
you
know.
talk about the different cities, areas, territories. Like for me, when you came in earlier, I'm going to eat a dosa, which would be a normal South Indian. It's being in Dubai, you've understood this is from Kerala, this is from Hyderabad, or this is from any other place.
Absolutely. And I love that, in New York, these would be ethnic foods.
Yeah.
Afghani food, ethnic food, whatever. Yemeni, these are like your ethnic. Here we don't.
Okay.
Like, I mean, we have so much depth. This has become part of our mainstream lingo. If you have lived in Dubai for so long, you're going to be so comfortable flexing your way through different cultures. You will become knowledgeable and you will become adept. And for you, it's not ethnic anymore. This is the world. Like we are citizens of the world.
Yeah.
And it's so common for us to one day have a meal from Uzbekistan and then the next day have a meal from, I don't know,
Ethiopia or Nepal. Now you see this.
South Africa. So just that. And for us, we don't even think of it as a separate ethnic category.
Yeah.
It is our DNA that we are multicultural.
Absolutely. And that also goes around with our own country. So you would say South African, Ethiopian and so on, as food in countries. But when it's Indian, it's North Indian, it's your biryanis only, it could be your chaat. Again, in chaat, there is a Mumbai kind of chaat, there's a Delhi kind of chaat. Because, me being from Mumbai, I'm like, when a Delhiite would tell me, listen, tum hamara chaat khao.
Yes.
I'm like, listen, please, you should eat Bombay ka chaat. And recently when I went to Delhi and I had that pani puri, which they call Golgappa. I'm like, wow, they're real. I don't want to tell that to them, but this chart is a little better than Mumbai. It is.
All the Delhiites are listening.
I totally
celebrate.
get you. And that also happened when I was trying to do the restaurant. It just came to me and I'm like, I didn't think of the cuisine or whatsoever. Yeah. And when my mom would come here, people would be like, call us over for a meal, a fish meal, I'm like, nobody knows what is Koli cuisine. And it's not on the Indian culinary map. And this would have been some way with a Goan cuisine or a North Indian cuisine. So I said, let me try and put it as my vision to bring the Koli cuisine onto the Indian culinary map and eventually make it international. To our good luck, our cuisine is well accepted and it's doing very well. And that's the whole flair. I mean, I really don't know if I would be thinking of opening a restaurant in India. And people ask me, okay, so are you guys in Vasai? Is this your branch here? I'm like, no, this is a Dubai-born baby. And that's
brilliant.
How it is.
And I think that's a prime example, walking into Vasai Local and suddenly realizing, wow, this community exists, the Koli community exists. I had no idea. I'm Indian. I had no idea that this indigenous fisherman community even happened. I think that discovery is just so fantastic even before the food has hit the table.
Yes. And it's not only the discovery of food. I think it was self-discovery for me as well, because what happens is when you're in your own culture, you're like, okay, I'm a Koli. You don't appreciate 100%. It that much. Like when for the inaugural, I wore the Koli sari, which we call it the lugra. In school, when people would tell me, hey, listen, we're doing a Koli dance. I'm like, okay, bye. Guys, enjoy. I'm so not wearing that thing, And today, destiny brings me here to wearing my own sari for my inaugural.
There we go.
And
I'm
here
back in the kitchen for rotis. You're
Yes,
wearing.
bring it on.
Mums always win, essentially.
Yeah. So I've heard from your various podcasts of how Frying Pan Adventures was born, but I still would want you to tell people your story again, so
Sure.
my viewers would know how was it born, because I did hear about how you were a little skeptical to even put this out to your family.
Yeah.
I guess your dad, and then you just decided to go with it.
That's
and your
true.
sister Farida came along. Could you give us a little insight on
Sure.
that?